Hey everyone, it's Chelsea with Savannah Ren Studio, and today I wanted to catch up on my workshop for Red Moon Women's Circle this past July. As I mentioned before, I've been on about a 4-week recovery from minor surgery, and so I've fallen a little bit behind, but I'm working to catch up um, on our discussions for Red Moon Women's Circle as well as Messy Yoga Mom workshops. And so the workshop that I had planned for early July was entitled Shadow Work or Introduction to Shadow Work. Um, this is one of those topics that I just absolutely love discussing. I It can become an instant rabbit hole for me, and I could just spiral, just throwing out all the different types of information that I know and love about shadow work. And I enjoy it so much because it was one of the first activities that really helped me on my own spiritual healing journey. And, a little bit of background, I started getting into shadow work about 3 years ago now, the fall of 2018. I randomly had decided to go and attend a workshop at Sacred Earth Arts in Kansas City. And it was called The Descent of the Goddess, and it was a 4-week program whereby we looked at our connection to the dark goddess and her power in healing, as well as the chakras, and how we can work through some of our blockages within them. And it was really the first time that I was introduced to the concept of shadow work. In the healing spiritual community, when we talk about and use the word shadow work, a lot of times it is a phrase that has a little bit more esoteric quality to it. But the general concept behind shadow work is awareness, mindfulness, and introspection. And I'm planning on talking about that in a second, as we go and delve into some of the concepts that go along with shadow work. So it was through this 4-week class with Sacred Earth Arts that I really started to learn more about the process of shadow work and incorporating and integrating our shadows into our concept of being a whole person rather than being a bad person or being a good person with lots of shadows or toxic traits. And the whole process was completely eye opening for me. So much so that I have spent the last 3 years really delving into the concept of shadow work so that I could offer the same insight and healing process to others. Now, the what I want to cover in today's workshop is to just kind of lay the groundwork, the foundations of what shadow work is and how it can be beneficial to you. You can, find information online, but I really want to encapsulate what I view shadow work to be and how I see it as being the first steps toward healing traumas and our quote unquote shadows that we have within ourselves that we are uncomfortable possessing. So, the idea of shadow work stems from the work of Carl Jung and his idea that within our subconscious, we have these shadows, which could be negative emotions, thoughts, traumas, images, sensations, personality traits, behaviors, patterns that we live with, that a lot of times we are very uncomfortable with the fact that we possess them or that they're a part of us. But also, a lot of times we maybe are unaware that they exist. We may act them out without any cognitive awareness of what we're doing or what we're experiencing. And so his theory was that to work through the steps of healing, one has to first become aware of one's shadows, whatever they may be, work toward processing those shadows. What do they mean? What do they mean about myself, about my story? And then working toward integrating them in such a way that you can learn from them and then decide whether or not you want to change or alter those shadows. It's one of the important parts about shadow work is that the choice is yours. Once you know what some of your shadows are, you get to decide what you do with that information, whether it is sit with those shadows, process them, and work toward releasing them and transforming those shadows into points of healing and growth, or choosing to not take any steps and allow them to just be a part of you. And that's one of the things that I was really drawn to with regards to shadow work and this concept set down by Jung, is the idea that you get to choose. You have the power to decide what you do with the knowledge of your shadows. And as a person that has spent so many years feeling disempowered, powerless, in many cases feeling like a victim um, of circumstances and situations and of people, a lot of times, knowing that I had the power to choose what I do on my healing path and on my life path in general was just absolutely revolutionary for me. And it, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I was reading books by Deepak Chopra and Bryn Brown. And yeah, there was, some seeds of shadow work within their works, but it wasn't exactly what I needed. I mean, they had, they planted the seeds, but it was through the work of sacred earth art and my own research into Carl Jung and his principles of shadow work and archetype and counseling that I really started to see a clear path for my own life and for my own healing. So, that gives you, a very broad overview of what shadow work is. But, what does shadow work look like? I want to preface this by saying that shadow work is highly individualized. There are tools that we can use to gain awareness and mindfulness of the different types of shadows and the different layers of shadows that one might have within them, and different skills and tools that we can use to then incorporate the shadows and process them. But that whole step-by-step process is very personal and very individualized. And so when I, give you some ideas for the different tools that I use in my own practice, for my own shadow work counseling services, these are the ones that I specifically gravitate toward. And they're just a small array of the different tools and techniques that are out there for you to try. The one thing that I do want to mention is that when you are beginning your journey through shadow work, I highly recommend that you work on creating a support network to help you through the process. Shadow work can be very intense. It can be dark at times. It can trigger feelings of anxiety, depression, PTSD, stress responses, and trauma responses. And so a trusted support network is paramount to making sure that you are safe while you begin to explore the concepts of shadow work and the shadows within you. Now, this support network could be family, could be friends, could be a partner or a spouse. It could look like a counselor or a spiritual counselor. It could be a therapist or a psychologist, psychiatrist. It it's whatever feels right to you. To give you example, my own partner is my central support person. And then I have a therapist who will also help me as I move through my shadow work. And then on the third level, I have a small group of friends that I feel like I can trust with my darker experiences and my darker emotions. And when I say trusted, I mean that I can trust that they won't judge me or criticize me for having these feelings and for expressing them. And it's both of those that work together to create a trusted support person. And so I highly recommend that you work to have that support network in place before you start really delving into the deeper aspects of shadow work. Now, if that's not possible, that's, perfectly fine. It's just one of those recommendations that I like to give my own clients when they sign up to do shadow work counseling with me. Some of the skills and tools that I use in my own shadow work services, I use a lot of guided meditation to help my clients explore the deeper shadows and bring their awareness of those shadows to the surface so that they can examine them. I use embodied yoga principles on a pretty regular basis as a way to express shadows in a safe and constructive manner. So, for example, if I'm doing a EYP sequence with my client, maybe we're looking at issues of boundaries. And so we'll do different poses that simulate what boundaries look like and feel like, and how does that individual react to those poses and the concept of boundaries in general. I also use different ritual tools, whether it's oracle cards or tarot cards, as a way to help my client work through the different archetypes that might be involved with their shadows, connecting their individual shadows to more collective concepts and imagery. And I also really like to use art therapy and different forms of stream of conscious writing to help express those shadows so that we can see them and process them in the light, for a lack of a better word. And then I also like to do a little bit of talk therapy, just talking and processing with my clients to see how they're feeling about their shadows, help them brainstorm ideas for what they would like to do next with regards to the information that has come up in the sessions. And I've also been studying more in depth the theories of Gestalt therapy. So it's this idea of embodying your stories, your dreams, looking to your dreams for information. And in some ways, it is very much like counseling role play, but rather than the counselor being a part of the role play, it's you working through the process by embodying different aspects of the concepts you are dealing with and the shadows that you are investigating. Now, like I said, those are just some of the ones that I like to use. There is a whole host of different tools and concepts and skills that can be helpful on your journey through shadow work. There, you can Google shadow work and a whole bunch of different things will come up. One of my personal favorite tools that I use for myself is I like to journal, and I have 3 or 4 pre-created journals that I've purchased from other sources that I use in my own shadow work process as a baseline to help get my awareness flowing and bringing my own shadows to the surface. One of the things that I do want to mention is that everyone has shadows. If someone says that they don't, whether they be family, friend, acquaintance, spiritual leader, political leader, your boss at work, if they say that they don't have shadows, that they are completely enlightened and disconnected from the physical world and the world of the unconscious, I would not completely trust their authenticity. I've known quite a few spiritual leaders who have said that they have, eliminated all of their shadows and they're completely enlightened and they are, for lack of a better word, perfect light workers. And I'm here to tell you that that's just not true. There is no way to completely eliminate all of your shadows during your lifetime. As a spiritual being, after this life, that's of course up for debate because I'm a physical being, so I have no knowledge of what happens specifically after death. But here on this plane, on this planet, in this lifetime, shadows are a part of being alive. And we can work with our shadows, we can process our shadows, we can look at them and say, I'm going to change this within myself for better or worse. But to say that you don't have shadows is an absolute lie, and it is a form of disassociation in my mind, because I view that if you are not connected to your shadows, you are ignoring your shadows, suppressing your shadows, or repressing them, and you're completely disconnected from your whole self. And our main goal as beings in this lifetime is to work toward being our whole integrated selves, and to be our favorite version of ourselves, something that is connected to our true self and our soul. And I believe that shadow work is one of the stepping stones to help move us as spiritual beings toward that integration as a whole person. Learning through lessons, working through karma, pursuing our dharma until we're ready to move on to the next phase of existence, whether that is reincarnation or hanging out in heaven. That's really up to the universe after our death. So, just to recap, the concept of shadow work stems from the workings of Carl Jung in the 20th century. It is about drawing awareness to the darker aspects of our person, whether that be thoughts, behaviors, patterns, images, sensations, traumas, so that we can bring that to the surface, look at it, and engage with those shadows mindfully to begin to integrate and process through those shadows, knowing that we have the choice of what we do with that knowledge. And there are a wide variety of tools that you can use on your journey through shadow work toward healing. Yoga is one that I love. Meditation is another. Therapy, art therapy, counseling, talk therapy, those are all really good options. But of course, those are only a small portion of what is out there and available to you if you are interested in looking. Before I sign off for today's workshop, I just want to say, if you're looking for a good place to start, consider signing up for a initial counseling session with me to discuss the concepts of shadow work and how it can be beneficial to you. You can find that information on my website, www.savannahrenstudio.com, or you can contact me through Facebook and Instagram. Pardon me. And as always, if you enjoy my content, consider helping me fight against the evils of the YouTube algorithm. Like, share, subscribe. And if you would really like to support me, consider becoming part of my Patreon community. All of my Patreon members get my yoga classes, my meditation classes. They get weekly intentional oracle draws and discussions of what's going on in astrology each week. And they also get information about my upcoming workshops as well as the recordings for those workshops. And so, go and check that out on Patreon. And until next time, the light and the darkness within me recognizes and honors the light and the darkness within you. I'll see you next time, friends.